For some of us, carrying other people's shame, anger, guilt, and emotional burdens becomes an identity. It's an identity we often inherit in the homes we were born into, the places we learned to call home. If our caregivers had little emotional autonomy of their own, if their relationships were driven by chaos, emotional instability, inconsistent behavior, or love that was conditional and transactional, we don't just absorb those patterns. We often begin to believe it's our responsibility to fix them. I used to be one of those people. From a very young age, I made regulating other people's emotions my purpose. Like a wind turbine that spins in whatever direction the wind blows, I constantly tried to stabilize the storm between my parents. As I grew older and stepped into the world, invisible clog of responsibility settled onto my shoulders. It quietly followed me into every relationship I built. I found myself surrounded by people waiting to be rescued, understood, emotionally regulated, loved, validated, and every time I played the hero, I reinforced the belief that my own worth depended on saving someone else. So, where did that lead? Years of emotional and psychological abuse. Years of trying to earn belonging by performing, becoming better, prettier, more successful, always chasing another version of more. Until one day, I woke up. Not all at once. It was a 5 year process, a process where it felt as if I died and came back to life over and over again. Every branch I tried to hold on to snapped before I could find stability. And eventually I realized something almost absurd. There had never been a tree to begin with. Did I eventually stop absorbing everything other people refused to feel? Did I stop processing the pain, carrying it through my own nervous system and regulating it on their behalf? Yes, but not without paying a price. Maybe parts of this feel painfully familiar, or maybe none of it does. These days, I've stopped performing even here. I no longer try to carefully package my words or control how they received. I simply speak from where I am, trusting they reach the people who need to hear them. That's why this channel exists. Because letting go of the identity built around carrying everyone else's weight leaves behind one terrifying question. If I'm no longer the one who carries, then who am I? And not knowing the answer often feels more frightening than remaining trapped inside the same cycle forever. Before I went through my own grieving process, escaping the present moment, escaping reality, and escaping the darkness inside me was all I knew. The strange thing is, I didn't even realize I was escaping. Most people don't consciously choose avoidance, they simply don't recognize it. But the cost of avoiding yourself is becoming imprisoned inside an identity you spent years constructing. No matter how stable, intelligent, or successful you appear on the outside, none of that heals the wounds quietly bleeding beneath the surface. You can travel the world, build careers, achieve remarkable things, yet internally you may still be like an ant trapped inside a circle drawn in a chalk, walking endlessly, believing you're moving forward while always arriving at the exact same place. Ironically, Even though I'm using words to describe this journey, healing doesn't happen through words, it happens in silence. Rather than telling you every event that shaped my life, I'd rather share the lessons my emotional world taught me. Because lessons create awareness, stories entertain, but silence transforms. Silence. Meditation, spiritual traditions, contemplative practices, no matter which path you explore, they often arrive at a similar invitation. Sit still, embrace the silence, become it, allow whatever needs to flow to flow. Our minds constantly producing thoughts. Those thoughts emerge from beliefs, habits, memories, language, culture, and emotional experiences. As children, we encounter reality directly. But as we grow older and develop an identity, the mind slowly turns reality into a stage where it endlessly writes stories, predicts outcomes, and calculates possibilities. You've probably encountered ideas like manifestation, energy, or quantum consciousness in popular culture. Many of these concepts are wrapped in spiritual language. But here, I'd rather approach the mind from a scientific perspective. Our thoughts don't appear randomly. They're built from countless internal and external triggers. The language we speak, the culture we grow up in, and the emotional experiences we accumulate, they all shape the way we think. That's why a child's experience of reality is fundamentally different from an adult's. Adults rarely meet reality directly. We meet our interpretation of reality. We filter everything. We assign meaning. We make assumptions. We create narratives. And our brain depends on those narratives because every decision we make is built upon them. Throughout psychology's history, from Freud and Jung to modern behavioral science and cognitive neuroscience, we've gradually moved toward more evidence based models of understanding how these mental processes work. One of the clearest examples is cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT. According to CBT, our thoughts originate from deeper cognitive schemas. Imagine someone with a self sacrifice schema. Their automatic priority becomes everyone else's happiness. When tension appears in a room, their first thought might be, I need to listen, I need to understand, I need to help. But underneath those thoughts are even deeper beliefs. If I don't empathize, I'm not useful. And if I'm not useful, I'm not valuable. CBT teaches that once we become aware of these beliefs, we can question whether they are actually true. If they aren't, we can gradually replace them with healthier and more functional ones. Cognitive change is then supported by behavioral change. For example, someone experiencing depression may struggle with basic self care or daily routines. Small behavioral exercises can slowly rebuild discipline, confidence, and self efficacy, those creating positive feedback between thought and action. What's fascinating is how closely many modern psychological approaches overlap with practices that have existed for centuries in the East. In Buddhist traditions and many non dual teachings, the goal isn't to eliminate thoughts, it's to observe them without becoming them, to recognize that a thought isn't automatically reality. Then, from that awareness, to choose differently. This isn't something we are taught in school. It begins when we become willing to sit quietly without distracting ourselves and simply witness what's happening inside. Meditation has served this purpose for thousands of years. Modern psychotherapy often refers to the same skills as mindfulness. My own relationship with silence didn't begin because I was searching for enlightenment. It began because I was trying to escape. For years, I moved back and forth between seeking and avoiding, trying to understand why my external reality seemed so distorted. Eventually, I realized that I had built my entire sense of worth on being useful, on helping, on caring, on taking responsibility for everything. Seeing that truth wasn't enough because recognizing a pattern isn't the same as understanding how deeply it controls your life. You can notice your fear of inadequacy, but realizing how that fear shapes every relationship, every decision, every ambition, that requires awareness. When my identity first began to crack, awareness didn't arrive peacefully. It arrived through upheaval. During these transitions, relationships begin to change. Some people experience conflict with friends, others family, others through careers, health, or love, because as the identity holding your entire psychological system together begins to collapse, your perception of reality begins collapsing with it. During those 5 years, nearly every area of my life fell apart. Looking back now, I understand why. The identity I had built depended almost entirely on external validation. And in a world designed around other people's approval can never remain stable because the external world is constantly changing. Reality doesn't exist to confirm who we think we are. It moves independently of us. Collectively, humanity shapes that reality, but it remains unpredictable and separate from our essence. If we abandon our authentic self in order to adapt to external reality, if we build an identity without ever truly meeting ourselves, the distance between who we are and who we are pretending to be grows wider every single day. Eventually, both the identity and the reality built around it collapse. That collapse arrived for me through grief, but that's a story for another episode. For now, I want to leave you with a single question. Think about the burdens you've been carrying and then ask yourself, who are you when you're no longer carrying them? I'll see you in the next episode.